And my dad had a way of saying, get up and put your shoes on. And so he gave me this sense of a work ethic. But if I'm honest, that alone would not put me here on this stage. I mean, here's a kid who grew up in public housing. I'm running for the United States Senate against the wealthiest member of Congress. Only in America is that possible. And I am fighting to make sure that kids like me, whether they're growing up in public housing down in Savannah, Georgia, or rural disaffected communities in North Georgia, that they have access to the American dream that I believe so much in. And I'm concerned that Washington is not focused on ordinary people. You can't tell the difference between Washington back rooms and corporate boardrooms. My opponent represents the worst of that kind of problem. And that's why I'm grateful for this opportunity.
I'd like to respond.
Please do.
Thank you. I was born and raised on a farm. I grew up working in the fields. I waitressed my way through school, and I was the first in my family to graduate from college. I worked hard to live the American dream and became a job creator right here in Georgia. But this type of rhetoric is a distraction from the issues at hand. The Democrats want to fundamentally change America, and the agent of change is my opponent, radical liberal Raphael Warnock, someone that has attacked police from the pulpit, someone that has attacked our military, someone that has agreed to raise taxes on hardworking Georgians as much as $2,000 per family off the bats. That's not what Georgians need to get through this pandemic and get our economy going. I'm fighting for the American dream every day.
Okay, Reverend, you're going to have an opportunity to respond to those things because I know Greg is going to get to them. It's his turn to ask you a question.
Yeah, I have a question on that same topic. You've been attacked for comments you made from the pulpit about law enforcement and the military, foreign policy, among others. You've also said they're taken out of context, but you made these remarks in a public forum. Why shouldn't Georgians take them at face value?
Look, it's clear to me that my opponent is going to work really hard, spending millions of dollars of her own money trying to push a narrative about me because she's clearly decided that she does not have a case to be made for why she should stay in that seat. I have worked my whole life to pull people together. I've been working on criminal justice reform. I've worked alongside law enforcement officers to do that work. Several years ago, I actually brought together the law enforcement officers here in this city, the chief of police, the Black Lives Matter activists, the sitting attorney general, families, parents, all in my church, focused on working on these issues that we've seen emerge time and time again. And we need somebody who knows how to bring people together rather than using these issues as a political point to be made. These issues are tragic, and our law enforcement officers lay it on the line every day. They have an ally with me. I just think that you can affirm what law enforcement officers do and hold them accountable.
Senator Leffler, 30 seconds.
You know, my opponent, radical liberal Raphael Warnock, has called police officers gangsters, thugs, bullies, and a threat to our children. When I gave him the chance to apologize in our first debate, he declined. He's also said that you can't serve God and the military. He's used the Bible to justify these types of attacks and make other divisive statements. What we need is someone who can bring together, that can help us get through this pandemic and rebuild our economy across this country and right here in Georgia. That's what I'm fighting to do.
Do you want to put that into context?
Sure, I'd love to respond. Listen, this is why I think folks have turned off from politics very often, because people will turn anything into a kind of cynical political argument. I was preaching that day from a very familiar Matthew text that says you can't serve God and mammon. It was a sermon about a moral foundation for everything that we do, and that when you have everything in order, that actually makes you a better soldier. It also makes you a better senator. And had Kelly Loeffler listened to the sermon, rather than trying to make a cheap political point, she would not have used her advantage as a U.S. senator to make millions on a pandemic while playing it down to the people she was supposed to be representing.
Lisa,
I'd like to respond.
Oh, go ahead, please.
You know, I'm a Christian. I'm a person of deep faith. I don't need a lecture from someone who has used the Bible to not only justify attacking our military. That's not in Matthew 6:24. It doesn't say you can't serve the military and God. but he's also used the Bible to justify abortion. I cannot stand by and let Georgians not know who my opponent is, how radical his views are, and how he would fundamentally change our country. He's out of step with Georgia's values.
All right. In the second round, you'll get a chance to ask questions of each other. Lisa has one last question here for Senator Loeffler.
Senator Loeffler, good evening. State election official Gabriel Sterling proclaimed this has to stop. He was referring to threats against election workers, Governor Kemp, and the Secretary of State who received death threats. Sterling warned that false claims of widespread election fraud could lead to violence. He said somebody's going to get killed. At his urging, you responded by denouncing the violence, but some didn't think that was enough. So tell us tonight, what is your message to those who would threaten officials, and have you made an effort to help lower the temperature on the behalf of the Republican Party?
Well, absolutely. As someone who has been the subject of threats of violence, I absolutely denounce it. But here's what's at stake. The future of our country hangs on this state having free, fair, trusted elections. We have built an organization within our campaign to make sure that Georgians trust this process. And President Trump has encouraged Georgians to get out and vote because the future of the country is at stake on January 5th. We need folks to trust the process because that's what makes our democracy possible right here. We've got to get to the bottom of these investigations that have started too late. There's 250 investigations, including into Raphael Warnock's voter registration organization for the second time for trying to register voters in New York. That doesn't represent the voice of Georgia. I'm going to fight to make sure that we hold officials accountable for carrying out free, fair, trusted elections that are accurate.
Reverend, I want to ask you about this election. Much has been made of President Trump's refusal to concede, but 2 years ago, Stacey Abrams refused to concede the governor's race, saying that there was voter suppression. Do you think there was voter suppression 2 years ago, and do you think this election has been fair?
Listen, voter suppression is something that happens all across our country. It's happened here in the state of Georgia. But Stacey Abrams did not refuse to acknowledge the fact that her opponent was the governor. Here we are several weeks after the election, and Kelly Loeffler continues to cast doubt on an American democratic election. It's time to put this behind us and get focused on the concerns of ordinary people. While she's playing political games, trying to represent somebody who doesn't live in Georgia, Georgians are wondering when are they going to get some COVID-19 relief. They're wondering who is going to put small businesses in front of the large corporate giants. And they're wondering when are we going to call the people, give the people we call essential workers an essential wage. I want to go to the United States Senate to stand up for ordinary people. And when politicians aren't satisfied with the voters, they try to pick their voters. And that's what's going on right now.
May I respond?
Please.
Radical liberal Raphael Warnock has partnered with Stacey Abrams in these voter suppression conspiracies when in fact we have record turnout in our state year after year. And, it's unfortunate that the focus is on a debate about who won the election when this process is still playing out. And President Trump has every right to every legal recourse. But we also have to make sure that Georgians know that we have a process that works, that their vote is counted, and that no illegal votes are counted. And that's what I'm going to continue to fight for, to make sure that Georgians know everything is at stake in this election, the future of our country, not just the radical ideas of the left, but the radical candidates who would defund the police, who would stand by and attack our military and then withdraw funds that would support Chuck Schumer's defunding of our military by 25%. And I'm going to continue to make sure that we come back from this virus strong. I'm the only candidate qualified to help rebuild our economy and get past this pandemic.
All right. We want to get to the point where you can ask each other questions. That does conclude the first portion of this debate. For people just tuning in, you're watching the runoff debate for one of Georgia's 2 U.S. Senate seats. We move now to the second round, where the candidates will ask each other a question. Candidates have 30 seconds to ask a question, 30 seconds to respond to their opponent's answer. Reverend Warnock, you get the first question to Senator Loeffler.
Thank you so much. Senator Loeffler, when you received the private briefing regarding the coronavirus pandemic, you dumped millions of dollars of stock in order to protect your own investments. And then weeks later, when there came an opportunity to give ordinary Georgians an extra $600 of relief, you said you saw no need and called it counterproductive. Why do you think it's counterproductive to help ordinary Georgians in the middle of a pandemic?
Well, thank you for that question, because I've been completely exonerated. Those are lies perpetrated by the left-wing media and Democrats to distract from their radical agenda. Since I got to the Senate, I've worked hard to deliver relief to Georgians during this pandemic, and I'm continuing to do that. But look what Democrats have done. They have stood for stonewalling relief that I voted for twice in the Senate, to deliver relief to families, to farmers, to schools and hospitals. They're playing politics. That's what they're using their lies to cover up. The fact that they don't have a positive agenda to lift Georgians up. They want to defund the police, raise your taxes, implement the Green New Deal that would crush jobs and opportunity. And what I'm working on is making sure that we can get the economy going again, that we can drive forward after this pandemic. And I've been working side by side for my colleagues to make sure that we get that done, and we have delivered results. $47 billion that I brought here to Georgia saved 1.5 million jobs at small businesses.
Reverend, you have 30 seconds to respond if you'd like.
Listen, I do not want to defund the police, and Kelly Loeffler knows it. But she keeps saying this because she wants to distract from her own record. The truth of the matter is, were it left up to her, Georgians would not have received the $600 of expanded unemployment insurance. And they haven't seen any relief in months. And she hasn't done anything. She's done nothing to provide relief for ordinary people, the folks I'm seeing all across this state who are in pain in the middle of this pandemic.
Senator Loeffler, it's your turn to ask a question of Reverend Warnock.
Reverend Warnock, in your writings and your teachings, you've repeatedly praised Marxism and the redistribution of income. Can you here and now, for all Georgians, renounce socialism and Marxism?
Listen, I believe in our free enterprise system. And my dad was a small business owner. And during the Great Recession, you know what I was doing? I was leading my church to build a community center where, among other things, we had a financial literacy center that taught people how to repair their credit, create a 700 credit score community, how to create a business, how to buy a home, how to participate in our free enterprise system. Kelly Loeffler, on the other hand, was teaching the big banks how to hide their investments offshore in the Cayman Islands. This is how she spent her career before she went to the Senate. This is what she's been focused on now that she's in the Senate. She was only there 3 weeks. I'm not sure she was fully unpacked when she started dumping millions of dollars of stock trying to protect herself. And she purchased that seat. It's done well for her. The issue is that the people who sold it to her don't own it. And the people of Georgia are coming back to get their seat.
Senator, you have 30 seconds.
Well, predictably, you've just heard more lies from radical liberal Raphael Warnock, who wants to distract from his own words, calling police officers gangsters, thugs, bullies, and a threat to our children, saying that you can't serve God and the military, for his attacks on Israel. You know, what I'm focused on is making sure that we continue to deliver relief. I've already delivered relief for 174,000 small businesses, $7 billion for hospitals. And when the government didn't move quickly enough, I purchased PPE out of my own funds, drove it to hospitals. I donated to hospitals, and I donate my salary to charities across Georgia. I'm here working for Georgia.
Reverend Warnock, your turn to ask a second question of the senator.
Yeah, my question is actually pretty simple. Yes or no, Senator Loeffler, did Donald Trump lose the election?
You know, President Trump has every right to use every legal recourse available. In our own state, we've seen time and again that we have investigations that need to be completed. In fact, we've run 2 audits, and those audits discovered thousands of ballots across several counties here in Georgia that were not counted. I've called for a signature audit. We need to hold folks accountable involved in these investigations to make sure that they move more quickly, because everything's at stake on January 5th for the future of our country. If the Democrats win They will defund the police. They'll keep our country locked down. They want more lockdowns. They'll raise your taxes in the middle of a pandemic. And they'll continue to keep the borders open and support taxpayer funding for illegal immigrant health care. And they'll defund our military by 25%. My opponent, radical liberal Raphael Warnock, would be a rubber stamp for Chuck Schumer because he's bought and paid for by tens of millions of dollars from out-of-state dark liberal money from Chuck Schumer.
Reverend Warnock, 30 seconds.
You know, I've been moving all across this state, especially going to rural areas. And when I go to these small towns, they're surprised that I'm there. I'm surprised that they're surprised they haven't seen a U.S. senator. And they're wondering why their hospitals are closing, why Kelly Loeffler doesn't think it's a good idea to make sure that they have health care in the middle of a pandemic. We refuse to expand Medicaid in this state. 9 of our hospitals are closing, have closed, and they're wondering who in Washington is looking out for them.
Senator Loeffler, you get the final question in this.
Reverend Warnock, you were arrested for obstructing police in the child abuse investigation. Can you tell me the nature of this child abuse? Why were the police called? What was your knowledge or involvement in this incident?
Sure, here are the facts, and Kelly Loeffler actually knows them. I was working and trying to make sure that young people who were being questioned by law enforcement had the benefit of counsel, a lawyer, or a parent. And the law enforcement officers actually later thanked me for my cooperation and for helping them. She knows this, but the question is, why is she doing this? It is because she has made a calculation that after being in the Senate for 10 months, she does not have a case to be made for why the people of Georgia should keep her there. She has been focused on the same thing she's focused on her whole life, herself. During the recession, she was helping billionaires like her hide their money in the Cayman Islands. She dumped millions of dollars of stock, played it down, and then when she could help ordinary people, she didn't do it, and the people of Georgia haven't seen relief for months. And so she's spending her millions of dollars focused on me because she has no case to make for herself. I think that's sad, but that's no reason for her to keep a Senate seat.
You have a rebuttal.
You've just heard radical liberal Raphael Warnock lie again and not answer a question, an important question that Georgians deserve to have the answer to. Unfortunately, this is consistent with his track record of disrespecting law enforcement. Anyone in Georgia can read the police report as to what happened in this child abuse investigation at his church camp. You know, Georgians deserve answers, but they also deserve someone who respects our men and women of law enforcement. You know, he did call police officers gangsters and thugs. He said that we should empty the prisons and end cash bail. He won't keep our communities safe. That's what I'm fighting for.
Senator, thank you. That does conclude our second round. Again, if you're just joining us, this is the runoff debate between candidates for the U.S. Senate seat to fill the Georgia seat that's currently held by Senator Loeffler. We turn back now to the panel to ask questions until we run out of time. As moderator, actually, I'm going to take the privilege of asking a question to the two of you to start this round. Reverend, I'll begin with you. Sure. I'm interested in the number that you're comfortable with when it comes to coronavirus relief. Senate Majority Leader McConnell seems to favor something like $500 billion. The moderates are talking about $908. 2 months ago, the White House suggested $1.8 trillion, and the Democrats wanted more. How much is required by this moment?
Well, the problem is for months we haven't seen any relief. And we can talk about the numbers. That would be an important part of the conversation. But when we saw relief, we saw the Shake Shacks of the world and Ruth's Chris and the LA Lakers at the front of the line and small businesses at the back of the line. Our frontline workers, our teachers, our police officers, our health professionals need PPE. Our workers need relief. And we need to begin even now, I think, thinking beyond how we survive this pandemic and begin to think about how we survive on the other end of the pandemic. While we're providing relief, I think it's time for us to start thinking about an infrastructure program here in this country that will repair our roads and our bridges, begin to build green energy and green energy jobs, provide jobs with a livable wage, and position our economy to lead into the future.
Can you give me a number?
Look, I think that we should at least make sure that whatever we do, workers are at the center of that relief.
All right. Senator Loeffler, you're in a position to vote on this very soon, perhaps. Janet Yellen has said the country can afford to borrow this money now to get people through this crisis until we're all vaccinated, and that if we don't spend it now, it's going to cost us more in terms of job destruction. Do you agree with that, and what would your number be? What could you live with?
Well, I was pleased to support all the relief packages this spring when we were addressing this virus. Over $3 trillion of relief to Americans, $47 billion that I helped bring right here to Georgia, including $7 billion for hospitals, 174,000 small businesses that I brought $15 billion in PPP funds to, saved 1.5 million jobs. And in fact, I voted twice on the Senate floor in recent months to support a package that Democrats have blocked, that Nancy Pelosi has now confirmed that it was playing politics with Americans' lives and livelihoods. She's held up targeted relief that would have gone to hospitals, to schools, to families, to small businesses. That's what I've been fighting for. That's what the Democrats are holding up. And my opponent, radical liberal Raphael Warnock, would be a rubber stamp for Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi as they try to use this pandemic to put the cost on the back of hardworking Georgians in the form of high taxes to fundamentally change America. And I'm not going to stand by and let that happen. I'm going to make sure that we serve our families and our small businesses right here in Georgia.
Thank you. Lisa, it's your turn to ask a question.
Senator Loeffler, you have called yourself the most conservative candidate in the race. You're also the richest U.S. senator with an estimated net worth of more than $500 million. How will you use your wealth and your privilege to improve the life of the average Georgian, the one who makes minimum wage, and more specifically, minorities who feel you have not made an attempt to meet them where they are?
Well, first of all, I have been blessed to live the American dream, and that's what I'm fighting for every single day in Washington, because I was born and raised on a farm. I grew up working in the fields. I started filling out a time card when I was 11. I waitressed my way through high school and college, and I was the first in my family to graduate from college. I know what it means to live paycheck to paycheck. I've done it. And I also know I'm blessed to live the American dream, and that's why I'm fighting to protect it. That's why conservative values matter, to uphold the Constitution. Our freedoms are under attack in this country. The religious freedom, the right to life, the Second Amendment.